Dr. Zalthor had been a veterinarian for over 20 standard cycles. He had treated everything from the massive sand crawlers of Theta Prime to the delicate wing structures of crystalline moths from the Andromeda colonies. His 4 hands were steady, his compound eyes sharp, and his reputation across 7 systems was impeccable. But nothing in his extensive training had prepared him for the moment. A human walked into his clinic carrying a creature that made every instinct in his body scream to run. The thing in the human's arms was pure nightmare fuel. Its body was covered in thick, matted fur the color of burnt rust. Its mouth was filled with teeth that could tear through reinforced steel plating. Its eyes were yellow and predatory, tracking every movement in the room with the focus of a born killer. The creature's claws, even retracted, were visible and sharp enough to disembowel most species in the known galaxy. Worst of all, it was making a low, rumbling sound that Zalthor's translator interpreted as a threat display. The human, a female named Sarah Chin, according to the appointment log, seemed completely oblivious to the danger. She wore a simple gray jumpsuit with oil stains on the sleeves and had her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She smiled at Zalthor as if she were bringing in a harmless pet for a routine checkup. Zalthor's assistant, a nervous Quillarian named Pip, had already retreated to the far corner of the examination room. His feathered crest was flattened against his skull, a clear sign of terror among his species. The other patients in the waiting area had taken one look at the predator and immediately rescheduled their appointments. Zalthor forced himself to maintain professional composure, though his mandibles were clicking in distress. He had read about Earth and its inhabitants, Deathworlders they were called in most galactic circles, a species that had evolved on a planet so hostile that it had created beings who saw danger as a challenge rather than a deterrent. But reading about humans and actually encountering one were very different experiences. The creature in Sarah's arms suddenly shifted, and Zalthor stumbled backward, his legs nearly tangling as he put distance between himself and the monster. His emergency panic button was within reach. One press and security drones would flood the room with tranquilizer gas strong enough to drop a Thorian battle beast. Sarah noticed his reaction and her expression softened with understanding. She adjusted her grip on the creature, cradling it closer to her chest. The predator's rumbling grew louder, and Zalthor was certain he was about to witness an attack. His people had protocols for this, rules written in the blood of species who had underestimated predators before. But then Sarah spoke, and her words made no sense whatsoever to Zalthor's understanding of biology or behavior. She looked directly at him with those binocular predator eyes that humans possessed and said calmly, "It's only scared." Scared? The apex predator was scared? Zalthor's translator must have malfunctioned. He checked the device embedded in his thorax, but it was working perfectly. The human had actually said that the creature capable of killing everyone in this clinic was frightened. Sarah seemed to recognize his confusion. She began speaking in that strange, gentle tone humans used, though Zalthor had learned this tone could precede either affection or violence with equal probability. "This is Rusty. He's a cat. Well, technically he's a Maine Coon, which is a breed of domestic cat from Earth. He's been limping on his front left paw for 2 days, and I'm worried he might have stepped on something sharp in the cargo bay." A cat. Zalthor's database immediately pulled up information on Felis catus, a species that Earth humans had somehow convinced to live alongside them thousands of years ago. The file was marked with 17 different danger warnings. Flexible spines allowing them to always land on their feet, retractable claws sharp enough to shred flesh, teeth designed for delivering killing bites to prey, territorial aggression, unpredictable mood shifts. The list went on and on. Yet Sarah held this Rusty as if he were made of something precious and fragile. Her hand supported his weight carefully, and she was stroking the fur along his spine with a repetitive motion, that seemed to calm the creature slightly. The rumbling continued, but Zalthor noticed it had changed pitch somehow, becoming less aggressive. Sarah noticed him staring at her hands. She smiled again, and Zalthor was struck by how humans showed their teeth when expressing pleasure. On most worlds, displaying teeth was a threat. "He's purring," Sarah explained. "It means he's trying to comfort himself. Cats purr when they're happy, but they also purr when they're stressed or in pain. It's a self-soothing behavior." This made no logical sense to Zalthor. The creature was generating a sound that indicated both pleasure and distress. How was anyone supposed to interpret that correctly? How had humans survived long enough to reach space when they chose to live with such confusing predators? But Sarah was waiting expectantly, and Zalthor was a professional. He had treated venomous creatures before, though always with proper restraining equipment and sedation protocols. He straightened his posture and approached slowly, keeping his movements smooth and predictable as he had been taught. Rusty's yellow eyes locked onto him immediately. The cat's pupils were dilated, making his eyes look almost entirely black. Another sign of agitation or fear, according to Zalthor's rapidly updating database. The creature's ears, which had been pressed flat against his skull, swiveled forward slightly. His whiskers twitched. Every muscle in the cat's body was tense, ready to explode into violent action. Zalthor stopped advancing. "Perhaps we should sedate the patient first? I have compounds that are safe for carbon-based life forms with similar metabolic structures to humans." Sarah shook her head. "Rusty doesn't do well with sedation. Last time a vet tried to put him under, his heart rate dropped dangerously low. Besides, if you move slowly and let him smell you first, he'll be okay. He's really a sweet boy once he knows you're not a threat." A sweet boy. The human had just called this apex predator a sweet boy. Zalthor wondered if perhaps all humans had some form of species-wide psychological condition that prevented them from recognizing danger. It would explain so much about their history of exploration and their baffling tendency to adopt lethal creatures as companions. But he was trapped now by professional pride and the fact that Sarah was looking at him with expectation. He extended one hand slowly, keeping it low and non-threatening. Rusty's nose twitched as he processed Zalthor's scent. The veterinarian smelled nothing like the earth creatures this cat would be familiar with. Zalthor's species secreted a mild alkaline compound through their skin as a defense mechanism. To Rusty, he probably smelled strange and wrong. The cat pulled his head back, pressing harder against Sarah's chest, his claws flexed out slightly, pricking through the fabric of her jumpsuit. Sarah didn't even flinch. She just continued that stroking motion along Rusty's back and made soft sounds that her translator didn't bother interpreting. Probably nonsense words meant to convey safety. "It's okay, baby," Sarah murmured. "The nice doctor just wants to help your paw feel better. Nobody's going to hurt you." Zalthor held his position, hand extended, barely breathing. In the corner, Pip was watching with all four of his eyes, probably recording this for a safety report later. The seconds stretched out. The clinic's environmental systems hummed in the background. A transport ship passed overhead, its engines creating a brief vibration through the station's deck plating. Then, slowly, Rusty stretched his neck forward. His pink nose touched Zalthor's chitin-covered finger with a delicate investigation. The cat's whiskers brushed against his palm as Rusty processed this new information. Zalthor could feel the heat radiating from the creature, the elevated metabolism that kept Earth creatures running so much hotter than most species. Rusty pulled back again, considered for a moment, then bumped his head against Zalthor's hand with deliberate pressure. The rumbling grew louder, and Sarah actually laughed with delight. "See? He likes you. He's giving you head bumps. That means he's claiming you as part of his territory. It's a huge compliment." The predator was marking him, claiming him. Zalthor was now apparently property of this Earth cat. The absurdity of the situation would have made him laugh if he weren't still terrified. But Sarah's obvious pleasure in the interaction gave him courage. He carefully scratched behind Rusty's ear, mimicking the motion he had seen Sarah use. The cat's purring intensified. His eyes closed halfway, and his body relaxed slightly in Sarah's arms. This was the creature that had sent his assistant fleeing to the corner? This rumbling, warm animal that was now pushing his head more insistently against Zalthor's hand? Sarah's expression softened further. See? He was just scared because this is a new place with new smells and new people. Cats are territorial. Being in an unfamiliar environment stresses them out. But once they realize you're safe, they're wonderful companions. Zalthor was beginning to understand something fundamental about humans that all the academic reports had failed to capture. They didn't just tolerate dangerous creatures. They understood them in a way that seemed almost supernatural to other species. Sarah had read Rusty's signals, interpreted his behavior, and known exactly how to help him feel secure enough to accept help. "Let's get him on the examination table," Zalthor said, his confidence growing. "I'll need to look at that paw." The examination itself was a revelation. Rusty remained tense but cooperative as Zalthor carefully inspected his injured paw. Sarah kept one hand on the cat's back, maintaining that reassuring contact. Zalthor found a small piece of metal embedded in the pad, probably a shard from the cargo bay flooring Sarah had mentioned. It would need to be removed and the wound cleaned, a procedure that would definitely cause pain. When Zalthor explained this, Sarah simply nodded and adjusted her grip, holding Rusty more firmly. "Do what you need to do, Doc. I've got him." The removal took less than 30 seconds, but Rusty yowled in distress and tried to pull away. Sarah held on, speaking in soothing tones the entire time, absorbing the cat's fear and anger without judgment. Zalthor had seen combat soldiers with worse pain tolerance. The moment it was over, Rusty's aggression evaporated. He pressed his face against Sarah's neck, seeking comfort, and she provided it without hesitation. As Zalthor applied the medical sealant and administered antibiotics, he watched the interaction between human and cat with new appreciation. This wasn't about domination or control. It was partnership, trust built over time. Sarah knew Rusty would be frightened and potentially aggressive, but she also knew he would accept necessary help if she provided the security he needed. "He'll be fine in a few days," Zalthor said, stepping back from the table. "Keep the paw clean and dry. The sealant will dissolve on its own as the tissue heals." Sarah's relief was obvious. She carefully lifted Rusty from the table, cradling him against her chest again. The cat had already forgiven the brief pain, his purring back to that steady rumble. "Thank you so much, Dr. Zalthor. I know he can be intimidating, but he really is a good boy." As Sarah carried her predator toward the door, Pip finally emerged from the corner, his crest still partially flattened. "How did you do that?" he asked Zalthor in their native language. "That creature could have killed us all." Zalthor watched Sarah pause at the reception desk to schedule a follow-up appointment, Rusty now looking almost sleepy in her arms. He thought about her words. "It's only scared." Such a simple observation, but it contained a profound truth. Fear made creatures dangerous, but fear also made them vulnerable. Sarah had recognized both aspects and acted accordingly. "Humans understand predators," Zalthor said slowly, "because they are predators, but they're also prey. Earth made them both hunter and hunted, so they learned to see both sides. They know what fear looks like because they've felt it themselves." It was a lesson Zalthor would carry forward. Over the following months, he treated several more human companions, including a dog that actually knocked him over with enthusiastic affection, and a lizard that Sarah's friend assured him was totally harmless, despite its alarming size. Each time, the humans demonstrated that same understanding. that ability to bridge the gap between species through empathy and observation. Rusty made a full recovery and even returned for routine checkups, during which he became progressively more comfortable with Zalthor's touch. The veterinarian learned to read the subtle signals cats displayed to distinguish between genuine aggression and simple fear responses. He learned that the rumbling purr could mean many things, and that context was everything. But mostly he learned that sometimes the bravest thing was not to run from fear, but to look past it and see the scared creature beneath the predator's exterior. It was a very human lesson, and one that Zalthor, a xenobiologist from a peaceful prey species, had needed to learn. Years later, when other doctors asked him about treating Earth creatures, Zalthor would smile and repeat Sarah's words. "They're only scared. Understand that, and everything else becomes clear."